Today is actually my birthday. Alright, so I actually started this on my birthday, but the video ended up taking way longer than I thought it would, so now it's a little after the fact. And I was trying to think, what video could be kind of a cool one to post on this day? I'm pre-recording this, so hopefully not working much on this video on my actual birthday. But as I was thinking, it seemed like the obvious choice, of course, would be a look back. A look back at the game that really in many ways changed my life or got me to where I am right now with this channel. That was Fallout 4, and even more specifically Fallout 4 modding. Had I never made some of those initial Fallout 4 mod videos, I'm sure many of you would not be watching this right now or even watching me at all. So as such, I thought it'd be a great time to actually take a look back. A look back at some of those mods that defined the last decade, a top 10 of the past decade. And considering that past decade does encompass all of Fallout 4's lifespan, this is also basically a top 10 of all time for Fallout 4, what I think is a best of the best thus far. Although to be clear, we are actually doing the decade, so any mod to release in 2020 is not eligible for this list, which actually is kind of substantial because there's been quite a few pretty good ones. Naturally, you could see the length of this video. It's definitely going to be a longer one, but first some clarity on what exactly is going on. I'm not just doing a straight top 10, I want to do a little bit of a mix mash. First, we're going to see 4 mods that are just great. Incredibly good mods that would fit in a video like this, but didn't fit into any of the categories. As in the second half of this video, for the final 6 mods, it's a category style. So the best gameplay mod, the best weapon mod, the best armor mod, the best quest mod, the best follower mod, and finally, what I think is the best Fallout 4 mod. I wanted to include those extra 4 uncategorized ones because there was a few mods that just didn't really fit in or were good but not the best in their category, but still some of the best overall. But either way, with all of that being said, let's take a look first at, well, actually Todd Howard. I thought this would just kind of be a funny one to include when I was doing the research for this video, and there was quite a bit of research. I think I ended up looking at almost 2,000 different mods in consideration. The first publicly available mod uploaded for Fallout 4 is the Todd Howard icon for Fallout 4, uploaded on 6th of November 2015. But otherwise, probably the best mod to start off this video is Start Me Up, which for me, when I think best of the decade, this was literally one of the first ones to pop in my head. If you're not familiar, Start Me Up is an alternate start for Fallout 4, and in my eyes, the best alternate start for Fallout 4. And after spawning into the game, you'll have several options. You could choose a totally alternate start, spawning in a totally different location at some point throughout the Commonwealth. You could skip the intro sequence of Fallout 4, but you still technically are Nate or Nora, or finally you could just relive the intro. There's several mods that do things similar to this, but where I think this one stands out is in its attention to details and even some of the options it gives you. In choosing this, there's actually quite a few things you could customize about your starting character. The staples like your special stats and name, but other things like how many levels you spawn with, and you could even have this randomized, so it's actually kind of fun on subsequent playthroughs. How much gear you start with, or even which loadout you're starting as, which will customize which weapons or armors you do spawn with, and this does have mod support, so you can do some crazy stuff like an Enclave officer if you have the appropriate mods for that. If you played Fallout 4 more than like 2 times, you'll love this mod. It's basically an essential to have, and even changes up some of the early quests and dialogue to be more appropriate from a role player's perspective, that you actually are somebody totally new and different in the Commonwealth. It really is a staple. But then following that up, we have the mod that is probably in the most bizarre situation out of any on this list, and that is Grim. So I wasn't really sure if I should include Grim or not because it's technically still in early access. And as of right now, you could only get it on the mod author's Discord. But it's a great mod, and it is out, you can download it. So for that reason, I'm including it. It's definitely the newest on this list, only coming out in late 2019. And in effect, what Grim is a comprehensive horror overhaul for Fallout 4. Scary mods have always been a very popular category, especially when you get to the October horror season, and oftentimes I'd find myself having to really build out a load order to achieve that scary or horror experience, but not with Grim. It truly is one mod that does just about everything you would hope from a scary mod. It adds new items and weapons, whether that be some new outfits with unique effects appropriate for the setting, or even just some cool weapons that you will find in some of the new enemies, which of course is the next and actually one of the really major aspects of this. You will find a wide variety of new enemies all throughout Fallout 4's Commonwealth and even in an otherworld that you can visit with this mod. These enemies range from unsurprising to totally outlandish and horrifying. There are some of the more common ones that you will just encounter, but there are also special enemies. Certain ones that you will get a notification when they arrive, and you'll definitely notice their presence. It's not something you could just ignore. And all that would probably almost earn it a spot on this list, but there's a lot more, especially in the form of the visuals and the audio. There's a lot of different customization options on how you want the game to look while using Grim, and so along with that, there's a ton of custom sound effects and a soundtrack that oftentimes will sync with in-game events, whether it be an enemy spawning, a certain weather type, this also adds in several new weathers, or just entering or exiting combat, and it really enhances that horror experience. Just listen to some of these examples. For those in between the visuals and the audio, it really got my heart rate racing, unlike any other mod I've experienced for Fallout 4. But even that isn't all, as when you start Grim, you do have the option to opt into the curse. As you are affected with this curse, you're going to slowly start to realize you're in a distorted version of reality. Sometimes you'll see enemies that aren't really there, even enemies popping up out of nowhere. The Commonwealth itself may change or transform due to the delirium you are going through. And even one of the craziest parts, you could get sucked into the other world at points. Here you may find even more extreme versions of some of these enemies, and it honestly is one of the most terrifying aspects of this, because you don't know exactly when it'll happen. Although fortunately, Grim also features quests to absolve yourself of this curse. All in all, it is a great mod, but also probably the best scary mod out there. It's probably not for everyone, because not everyone likes being scared in this game, but it's for most people, and it's definitely worth a try just due to the sheer amount of content it adds in, but also the quality of that content. But then next up, we have one mod that I don't think is getting the attention that it just deserves, and that is Pack Attack NPC Edition. This is one of the newer ones, only coming out in early 2018, and to me, it's an easy staple on my load order now and easily one of the best mods ever for Fallout 4. At its core, what this will do is overhaul human NPCs AI in Fallout 4. So now when you're fighting a group of raiders, gunners, or even hostile factions like the Brotherhood of Steel, their AI will be different. And by different, what I really mean is significantly smarter. At its core, what this mod will do is make it so the AI in Fallout 4 will now 1. Evaluate their situation, and then 2. Actually have several things to choose from based on that evaluation. So now if the AI are outnumbered, outgunned, they may retreat and regroup. They won't just run at you with melee weapons, but rather have coordinated group attacks. Sometimes they'll even try and flank around to the other side of your position and get you from behind. They're going to really focus on maintaining cover, jumping from cover to cover, or even if they realize they lost, they might just run away and retreat to preserve themselves. Now, Pack Attack doesn't only affect the human NPCs, but it affects the human NPCs more so. Animals also get benefits, but to me, it really shines with the humans. In Fallout 4, there really is such a focus on combat, battling off raiders, battling off gunners, or even which faction you side with, and in turn, which faction you have to fight. There's a lot of mods out there that will make these guys more powerful, make them do more damage, but Pack Attack is one of the only ones that I feel like made them truly smarter. That made your combat interactions in Fallout 4 feel different and just more interesting. There was an actual challenge because the AI were doing things that were creating new and additional challenges for me. It really is a great one and definitely deserves a lot more attention than it has right now. But then we have one that next up I think we're all a little bit biased into being preferential to or just preferring over some other weapon mods, and that is the Service Rifle, otherwise known as the Service Rifle Redux. Weapon mods are probably the most popular category of mods for Fallout 4, and as such, the two that do appear in this video actually had a lot of thought go into them. But specifically, the reason I want to highlight the Service Rifle Redux in the more miscellaneous mod category of this video was it, one, has that very powerful and notable nostalgia effect. It was the icon of Fallout New Vegas, what many of us feel was the best Fallout game to date. And the reason I love it so much in Fallout 4 is it's one of the best recreation or reimplementation mods that has been released thus far. And really, just in general, it's an incredibly good mod. All the weapon mods for Fallout 4 nowadays, or at least at the top level, do have the fundamentals down. Custom sounds, custom animations, they look good and have a staple of customization options. Where the Service Rifle actually takes things to the next level, even outside of that nostalgia effect, is it's a real top to bottom integration. At the bottom level, you have an otherwise not super good handmade version of this that was clearly thrown together by some raiders in the area. And you'll quite literally find this in the level list with some raiders using something like that. In game, it doesn't have the best stats, it doesn't do the best damage, but conversely, if you work your way all the way to the top end, you can create this into a very powerful rifle, whether that be in a LMG style, in a marksman sniper style, or even just the traditional service rifle style. What I find really cool about this one is how much customizability it actually has and how well integrated that is. For some of these, it's just a matter of leveling up your perks in Fallout 4 or finding some of the weapons on enemies. For some others, there actually is a bit more to go along with it. Finding certain magazines, buying certain things from vendors. If you want that true top end, it's not just a matter of getting Gun Nut 4. And for me, as far as lore-friendly weapons, or specifically weapons to be recreated for Fallout 4, the customization and integration of this one is pretty much unparalleled, even now a couple years after its release. And there's also a couple of unique variants in Fallout 4, some just being returns from New Vegas and other ones totally custom, that also have their own unique twist about them. But with all that being said, let's now move into the categorical aspect of this video, looking at 6 categories of mods and what I think is the best of the best from them, specifically in the last decade, but also just the best overall. The first of which is going to be the best gameplay mod for Fallout 4. With this category, I feel like it's some of the most appreciated but rarest mods. When a good gameplay mod comes out, like Gas Mask of the Wasteland, that really adds in a new fundamental aspect into Fallout 4. It really does a lot for replayability, for new experiences, starting a new playthrough. But when you look at the landscape overall for mods like this, what is the best of the decade? There really isn't even much competition, as the single best gameplay mod for Fallout 4 is Horizon. And even if you don't personally love Horizon or don't use it yourself, it's really hard to deny how big of an impact this has had on Fallout 4 overall. Coming out in 2016, Horizon has gotten consistent content updates and feature additions, with the last one literally being just last week in 2020. Horizon is one of those mods that basically affects everything in Fallout 4, whether it be perks and skills, crafting, settlement building, weapon play, and combat. It has its hands in almost all of those, and really spawned off this whole category of Fallout 4 mods just around Horizon, as it has become a fundamental for people's load orders, and in turn, people just build out their game around this one singular mod. And I would say, speaking broadly, what makes Horizon so appealing is it, one, actually changes up some aspects of Fallout 4. For example, the perks and skill system. It gets rid of just the perks and special, but also adds in certain skills that you do need to do certain things. You'll have to actually have a character build, whether you want to plan that out or not, but it will affect you. These aren't as secondary and definitely have a larger impact on gameplay overall. That is a notable change up that this does bring to the table, but it also builds atop certain features. Such as with the settlement system, it still does exist largely in a similar style, although scrapping and the resource numbers are a bit different, but also now you can give your settlers certain loadouts, you can make sure they have certain jobs, and oftentimes this is required to really get things off the ground. Other things like a field ammo switcher, so you could actually switch, similar to New Vegas, which ammo certain weapons are using. Weapons themselves, as well as the perks to go along with them, get a almost comprehensive redesign and rebalance. And frankly, I could go on and on and on. There's too much to include in just a few minute long segment in this video. Horizon to me is easily the biggest gameplay overhaul we've seen thus far. And it's not like it's done. Again, the last update for the beta version of 1.8 was just last week. It's continuing to evolve and transform Fallout 4, and it's one of the few mods to do so in such a comprehensive way. So for me, Horizon was probably one of the easy picks for this video, and especially for the gameplay mod category, but one of the hardest picks for this video, the one I had the most back and forth with, was the best weapon mod. I had a lot of ones that I was like, oh, it's that one, then I was second guessing myself, going back and forth. There's a ton of great weapon mods for Fallout 4. You have things like the Mercenary Armory or even the Russian Assault Pack, two incredible weapon packs bringing a ton of content, and both of those are by the same mod authors. But I think the thing with weapon mods is, when you get to the really top tier, what is the single best? There are a few that you could just make an argument for all of them. There's so much quality content and competition in this area. But I think it really comes down to the RU-556, the AK-5C, and the most recent, the FN-FAL SA-58. Which for me, I think out of those three, the FN-FAL may just be the single best. But again, you could probably convince me of any of the three, so take it tentatively. The reason this one stands out is, one, recency bias. It is the newest, but also it can learn from the other two, and in fact, many of the mod authors on those other two worked on the FAL. But as a standalone weapon mod, it really does have all of the fundamentals down. You can customize this in many different ways, whether you want a more handheld carbine style automatic rifle, or alternatively something that has a more marksman focus. You have different barrel options, stock options, and several in the middle to really customize and flesh that out. And with some of those customization options, specifically some of the different magazines, you actually can get different visual reloads, but also everything about this is just done to the highest quality. The animations are basically perfect, along with every attachment and even the base weapon itself. Both visually, sound-wise, animation-wise, it all comes together. Even further with this one though, there also are several unique attachments for it, whether it be for some of the attachments to the weapon or even for the receiver, converting it to be a laser energy variant. Like many of the other weapon mods I mentioned, this too does have several unique variants you can find all throughout the Commonwealth. Many of these meant to be on the sillier side or representative of certain memes, but some of them are actually just handy and really cool little rewards that you can stumble upon. Where I would say where this mod kind of edges it out a little bit for me is the fact that one, it does all of those other things basically perfect, but then two, it also does include its own melee weapon. This in the form of some new modifications for the machete and actually fleshing out that item in Fallout 4 in general, but also in a dungeon that adds in a ton of cosmetics that you can use. Several of these are just silly or meme worthy, but other ones are actually kind of cool and items I found myself genuinely putting on my character. This dungeon does scale to your level, so if you're high level and you want a tough fight, this is definitely a good place to look. And overall, I would say with these weapon mods, it really gets to being pretty subjective. I could see some people not choosing the FAL because they like the design of the AK-5C more. Or with the RU-556, you maybe just want an AR. Either way, between all three of these, they are really the pinnacle, the best of the best. But for me, I would say the FN-FAL edges things out just a little bit. It has some of those extra features, the customization options are just a little bit nicer, and all around the package is a bit more fun to use in Fallout 4. Although fortunately, all three of these are free and you can use all of them if you wanted to. But moving on from that, we also do have the best armor mod for Fallout 4, which is another one that definitely is somewhat tough to decide on. Armor mods are interesting because it feels like they've really had the biggest evolution. Do you guys remember for a while there, from 2016 to even early 2018, where power armor mods are what really dominated Fallout 4 modding? And there are some great entries on that, but it's almost like the trend has shifted. So nowadays, people don't typically want the bulkiness of that power armor, and even over those times, we saw several different pretty incredible armors for Fallout 4. Some of these being packs adding in a ton, but other ones being standalones. But even with this one, I feel like it was fairly easy to pick a top number, even among all of these various options. That is actually with a fairly old one in the Mercenary pack, coming out all the way back in 2016. The Mercenary pack has a couple of things going for it that some of these other mods don't. Right off the bat, it adds in a wide variety of really cool armors. If you want some simpler stuff, things that would just naturally fit into Fallout 4, you'd expect to see it in the base game, it has that. If you want some more military or armory looking armors, for lack of a better word, it has that also. You can make you or even some of your companions look like you are fully ready for war. But also all throughout that, several things in between, and even a wide variety of different accessories to add on to any of these, whether it be backpacks, hats, masks, or even little things like gloves. When you take all of that together, it really provides you with one of the best range of options for Fallout 4 and how you want to dress your various characters. But even cooler, and what I think takes this to the next level, is all of this is really nicely integrated into the leveled list. So when you face a really tough enemy into this really cool looking armor, it feels like a true challenge, and oftentimes is. But even further, some of the more miscellaneous or minor enemies will just have something different, something that makes them look unique that you might be like, oh, I actually want that one for myself for a change. I really like the Mercenary pack more so than some of the others because it adds in armors that fit into the world pretty well, but also are good enough to use on your character and do have a wide variety of customization options. And some of this is locked. Some of the armors the gunners get don't have quite as many customization options as the ones you get, so you can still personalize it, make it feel unique to yourself. And the nice part with this one is, even with just this singular armor mod, you could give yourself a fairly different looking Commonwealth, and definitely a better looking one. But then next up, we do have the best quest mod, or what in my eyes was the best quest mod. Fallout 4 is a little bit unique in that we honestly haven't gotten a ton in the way of quest mods. There definitely have been quite a few good ones, a few standouts, but I feel like most of us know most of them. There's only a handful of really truly DLC-sized experiences out there, and I would say this is another one of those categories where you could definitely persuade someone choosing one or the other. But for me, the best quest mod for Fallout 4 is Depravity. Two others that were definitely close runner-ups or honorable mentions are America Rising and Outcasts and Remnants. And from just a story perspective, I would say all three of those are actually fairly close. The stories are all fun, interesting, and incorporating Fallout aspects, with the two that didn't quite make it onto this video actually having a lot to do with the Enclave and previous factions from Fallout. But the reason I like Depravity, and frankly, the reason I've talked so much about Depravity in 2019, is its integration into Fallout 4's story. It's a new quest mod, but it builds off what we have already with Fallout 4. Instead of adding in a new settlement, you do a bunch of quests around Diamond City and Good Neighbor, which I personally love. New settlements are nice, and going to new areas definitely does enhance the experience in some ways. But for me, I really like Depravity because it's a good mix of adding in new content, as there are totally new companions, NPCs, and adventures to go on, but also adding on top of existing content, and in turn enhancing some of that existing content. Which, although some of the other quest mods do somewhat, this does it to the best degree, giving you new and additional options when starting out a Fallout 4 playthrough to go the evil route, which you really couldn't do before. With all that being said, Depravity itself is still a massive quest mod. It's not like it only is good because it uses Fallout 4's story. There are 10 hours of new content, over 20 quests to experience, and even several of those being side quests that really do take you on a different avenue. But then one to follow up the best quest mods of the decade, we of course have to look at some of the best follower mods. This is one category in particular that's rather interesting with Fallout 4. As compared to many of the others, this one kind of had its peak, or at least many of the great options released several years ago. And although we have gotten some more recent ones that are particularly good, just recently the Machine and Her did release, which is definitely the runner-up in this category. If I had to pick a second one, it would be that. Although, I think at the top of the heap, the single best follower mod for Fallout 4, it's actually pretty clear, and mainly because the top one's a bit of a cheater. As with that spot, I would give it to Tales from the Commonwealth. This is a pretty massive mod that's doing several things. Firstly, it's adding in a ton of new quests and experiences into Fallout 4. And these just feel very natural. You'll stumble upon them at some of the existing locations, and many times I didn't actually realize it was a custom quest. I thought it was just part of Fallout 4 and I never realized it was there. All of these being fully voiced, and a lot of them actually having pretty entertaining little side quests or mini stories for you to experience. But even further, one of the bulkier or lengthier type of quests you can get with this are for several of the companions that also come with this mod. In total, it's including 3 new companions, all 3 being fully voiced, having their own perks, some of them having tough choices to be made, and of course, having some more of those quests.
That might be easier. Alright, I'll follow. I don't like sharing air. It's like drinking from the same glass. Or kissing. Which is weird, you know, because we just met.
It's not really a pure quest mod per se with this one, but what makes it really stand out is even if you just cut out all of the other content and just left it to those 3 companions and their quests, it still would be top tier. The voice acting is almost perfect.
Is this a new body? Well, new in the relative sense. I wasn't aware synths came in vintage models.
Why do you think I chose it? It helps sell the illusion. Not that I needed it. Arthur would never deign to make eye contact with the help.
So, you've been working for him?
Naturally. I let him collect the combination, then waited for my opportunity to take it. After all, our brother would never agree to working together.
For several of them, indistinguishable from the typical quality you have in vanilla Fallout 4. The stories are interesting, and several times I had genuinely hard choices to make, and they have an impact as to what perks you could get or other things to do with those companions. For some, you actually have to build up your rapport and affinity before you could even get some of the quests or unlocks. In general, this will add in a ton of new content that fits in naturally to Fallout 4, but in particular with the category of those companions. They're entertaining, interesting, and have custom dialogue for several of the existing in-game locations.
When I got here, the walkways and beds were already there. Can't remember if I was the one who put them there, or if it was the two dead people the ghouls were eating.
Hey.
Here's a stim pack. Best when you don't know where you've been.
So although there are definitely a lot of other good companion mods out there doing similar things, none of them actually do this much of it. They don't have this much new content in one easy download. But then to enter into the final category, what in my eyes is the single best mod to come out for Fallout 4 in the 2010s. Honestly, for this one, it wasn't hard. You would think this would probably be a difficult category to pick for, but in reality, Sim Settlements is quite easily the best Fallout 4 mod to ever be released, and arguably one of the best Fallout mods in general across all games. Which who knows, maybe I'll have a video on that in the near future. Sim Settlements is another one that almost has a cheating aspect to it in the sense that it wasn't even just that original mod. The base mod of Sim Settlements gives you the unique ability to set up little plots of land in your settlements. Then settlers will move in, build these up, and very quickly you can have a sprawling town without you having to manually place every wall yourself. It creates truly living and interesting settlements without too much work from you. But then we saw several expansions, such as with Industrial Revolution expanding on this even further, giving you new and additional plot types and a lot more you can do with these settlements. Or even Rise of the Commonwealth, which allowed you to create fully fledged cities with little input from yourself, giving you even more ability to just adventure through the Commonwealth and actually have various characters in Fallout 4 run your settlements for you, with them having different effects. But then where I think Sim Settlements really hit its height was with its third expansion, that with Conqueror, giving you a totally different way to play Fallout 4. You could start your own military-based settlements and raid other ones. Now you had the option for settlements to be built up throughout the Commonwealth by default, so it actually seemed like a world full of cities where people were actually building things, not just a little farm with like 4 crops. Plus, this gives you an almost entirely different way to play. You can gradually build up your own military and go head to head with some of the other major factions in this game. And of course, to go along with this whole process, there are a ton of new quests giving you an alternate way to start out and play through Fallout 4, giving you a more permanent solution to the Preston Garvey problem. And now with each of these individual additions to Fallout 4, the base Sim Settlements and its now 3 expansions, you got hours upon hours of new content. A ton of new stuff to do and experience, giving this game quite a bit more replayability than it ever has had before. But that's not it, as even with this mod, there are a plethora of additional mods for the mod, giving you new ways to customize your settlements, whether it be different plot types and customization options, or even faction packs for Conqueror, so you could create different kinds of armies, not just the Raiders, but maybe like the Enclave or the Minutemen. And when you really take this all together, there's not another mod for Fallout 4 that will 1, give you this much free new content, but 2, just fits in so naturally into Fallout 4 while adding in so much on top of it. Sim Settlements is one of those systems that after you start to use it, you just don't want to go back. It works by itself if you want a completely hands-off approach to settlements, or even if you want a fully involved one. There's so many different ways to play with this one, and I think Bethesda should take a long hard look at this and really consider implementing it into future Fallouts, which is not something I could say for many of the mods on this list. If you're one of the people that somehow hasn't played Sim Settlements yet, it is definitely a good time to start. And even if you've already played it, there are probably a bunch of new mods or even updates to the original mod that give you new and additional options, new quests to complete, and there's even more on the horizon with an expansion 4 coming at some point. But with all that being said, that is a look at what I think are the best mods of the past decade for Fallout 4. We really take a look across the board, looking at the very best with sim settlements, but also just fleshing out those various categories. There are so many great options out there right now. You could have totally new experiences or just new items to bring on your existing experiences. This video obviously took a really long time to make, so I do hope you guys did enjoy it. I've been working on this for weeks while making other content, but as always, again, I thank you all for watching. Hopefully you found this informative. Hopefully you go and download some of these mods or even just start a new playthrough. But with that, I hope to see you all next time. Later.